Hey, Sarah.
Hi, Megan.
Hi, Rosie.
Hi.
Today we have our resident expert on anxiety, Dr. Rosie, on. Welcome, Rosie.
Glad to be here.
So, Sarah, how are you doing today?
Oh, I'm doing great. I am still just like flying high off of last weekend. So, as we shared before, I was planning a wine trip where all of my girlfriends were going to meet Megan. And it was last weekend. And it was so
Yeah.
special for me. I have
Oh,
a group of girlfriends that I've been friends with them for almost 20 years. And they were so excited to meet Megan. And Megan, I know you were excited to meet them. And we love a theme. We love to get really dressed up. We love a theme. And I love how on board with that you were, Megan. You were like, yes,
I do
white
love a
dress.
theme.
Yes, yeah. Your outfit was so cute. I'm like,
Oh.
how was it for you? I think it would be hard to walk into a group of women that have been really close friends for 20 years and you rocked it. I mean, I knew you were.
Thanks. I tried. I mean, it was intimidating because you guys have known each other for so long, and I was honored to be invited into the group. Like, that was just so sweet to include me. So I think I was thinking the whole time, like, am I making the best impression? I want to make sure these girls like me so I get invited to more fun things like this. But separately, I was also texting Rosie the entire time, like, Rosie, I'm anxious.
Oh, you were? I didn't know that.
I always text Rosie when I'm like that because she is the foremost expert in
Wait.
general, but also in my life.
Were you anxious? I mean, we're big energy. Big energy. And we that TikTok that went viral when it was like, me with my mom friends, like, hi, how are you? Me with my other friends. And they're like, that's my friend. We have a lot of fun.
I could tell. And I tend to be a lot more buttoned up for most of my life. So I feel like it took me a good few hours to get the hang of the type of fun the vibe. And I wanted to be dancing with you guys, but I was also like, what do I do with my hands right now?
The dancing was happening on a massive party bus. Just wild awesome. Party bus dancing. Well, so overall, was it a good time for you?
I had a blast, and your friends are wonderful people. I had so much fun hanging out with the whole crew. There was one person missing, Rosie.
Yes! Rosie, you need to come next time.
Well, Megan, to be honest, I didn't realize that you were texting me because you were anxious. I thought you were texting me because you had met like people wilder than I am, or at least as wild as I am. So I thought, oh, what a flattering thing to do. Yeah, I want to be a part of this group. Let's do it.
I know. Next time, Rosie will bring you. Yeah, so that I have my crutch also. I feel like I'm like, Rosie. Then it's somebody I know there, like it was a lot, but it was a lot of fun. So
Rosie, are you a full like extrovert?
Oh, it's bad. Yeah. I talk to strangers, Sarah.
Oh yeah, me too. All the time.
As much as possible. And Megan knows that psychologists are mostly introverted.
Yeah.
So I always felt like a bull in a china shop all through grad school.
But that's why I loved you. That's why I love Sarah, because I feel like it's so different than my energy, which is I'm attracted to it, but I also don't have it. So I'm like constantly trying to figure out what to do to have that.
Yeah, I think those energies like attract to each other. Like a couple of my really close friends are similar personality to Megan, and I think like you attract each other. But then I also attract people that have huge personalities and a lot of energy, just like me. And it's like that's fun too.
It is. Yeah. And group dynamics are always fun, like getting to know how people know each other and what the dynamic is there for their friendship. Just as a psychologist, I love understanding that sort of stuff. Like I love digging in. So yeah, it was a lot of fun.
I wonder from a psychologist perspective, like you had only known me as your new friend, and then seeing me with my old friends, I wonder like, did you see me in the same capacity, or did you see me with a different viewpoint?
I think in a different viewpoint, because when you and I talk, we go so deep. I feel like a lot, like we talk about research, we talk about kids, and we talk about socio-emotional development and stuff like this that comes out. And so to see you having fun with the childhood friends that you have or the college friends you have, that was totally different, you know, because I could tell it's just like, it's this long standing friendship of having fun. And you and I have a great time too, but it's just different, you know, like it's a different sort of.
To be fair, that day was for like drinking wine and dancing. And I was like, no serious talk. Like, we deserve a mom's day out.
Yeah. You should just know I don't know what to do with my hands when it's like that. So.
next time I'll hold them. Okay. Like at one point we were all dancing and then I reached down and I just pulled you up. I'm like, come on, Megan.
Yeah. I do need that actual intervention at the time. Yeah. I think I needed that. So yeah. Thank you for inviting me. It was fun.
It was so fun. We'll all plan another one. And Rosie, you'll have to fly out to California.
Definitely. There are a lot of flights leaving Dallas every day.
Sarah and I separately said we're going to come see you soon too, Rosie. That would be fun.
I mean, I'll let you know when it gets under 100 degrees.
Oh, yeah. Let us know. Yeah.
And show you the town. Yeah.
Well, how are you, Megan? What's going on with you this week?
Oh, so I just have to say right now there's a lot of really good TV, and because Rosie's on here for check-in and we both have a mutual love of Big Brother, I just wanted to talk about it for a second because I'm having so much fun with this new season. Rosie, what do you think?
I love Big Brother. And I think it is a little bit of that extrovert energy where I love watching people. I love watching groups. I'll talk to people all day and then go watch people talk. I think it's really fun. But it's a great season. It's a really interesting season. There's older women. Like when you talk about your girls trip, I think like women our age are so fun. Like, they're so genuine. Maybe it's because everybody's give a what is broke, but so fun. So I love to watch
we give
zero. I never would have expected that in my 20s, like how much fun it was going to be a woman this age and to be with women. Y'all, of course, are in your 20s. I'm 40, as we have covered. I love this season of Big Brother. It's, I think the some of it's overthought. Some of the production is overthought. It's complicated with all these different universes. But it's so fun to watch.
I've never seen it. Do I need to be watching this show?
Yes. Yes, you do.
There's like 60 episodes a season.
Yeah. There's 3 episodes a week, so it's a lot to keep up on.
You're in or you're out.
You are in or you're out. Yeah. So the premise of the show is that strangers get selected. A lot of people apply to be on the show. So of those people that apply, strangers get selected to be in this house, and basically everything that goes on in this house 24/7 gets recorded and gets made into these episodes that happen 3 times a week. And the whole goal of the game, it's a lot like Survivor, except there's no like wilderness. You're in a house, but you don't want to be voted out. So each week somebody gets voted out of the house. And in the end, what's the prize? Like $500,000?
I think it's up to like $500,000. Yeah.
Yeah. Why? How are they voting people off? Like, why? Just like, I don't like your personality, so now I want to vote you off.
That's how it starts out. And then it's alliances and things like that. Sarah, people lie. Right?
What?
Actually, Megan, every time I've ever thought about going on one of these shows, I thought no psychologist could actually do that and go and be a good listener and then use it against people and all this kind of stuff. And there's a psychologist this season. He's gone.
Oh, wait, was
Isom
he?
was a psychologist. He's a geriatric psychologist.
I thought he was an MD. Oh, I did not know that.
I think he's a psychologist. So when he got on, I was like, kind of wanted him gone for that reason.
Yeah, it's a little bit unfair.
What type of people are applying to be on this show? What personality disorders do you recognize in these contestants?
It's really interesting because they choose such a diverse cast every single year. I would say this year is more diverse because of the age differences. And so I feel like in the past, they've really focused on like 20s, people in their 20s a lot, like or maybe 30s were like the majority of the cast. And then they'd have a couple of people that were like in their 40s and up.
And they vote them off immediately.
Yes, they get voted off. Yeah, exactly. So this time they have a much more variety of ages, which I think makes it so much more interesting. Because these different alliances are forming. And then we did sort of see them separate to begin with, these alliances based on age. but now they're mixing, which is more interesting and fun, I think. So
yeah, and they have to turn on each other eventually, right? So
yeah.
if you make an alliance in the beginning, you eventually have to see how it unravels and who survives. Sarah, this is just
Do
there are
they
people
do
who
a
watch the show and there are people who don't.
do they do a celebrity version of the show?
Yeah, but it's less interesting,
Oh,
I
really?
think.
Why?
Do you think it's interesting, Rosie?
Yes.
Oh, I feel like they got Chris Kattan on there last season. He didn't even know how to play the game. I was
Oh,
like,
I
just
love
get out of
him.
the house. This guy was like bumbling around the house. He just needed to just go.
Was he doing a lot of head nods like he does?
So it's originally a British show, and it started in England. I forget the name of the creator, but the British version of Celebrity Big Brother is hilarious. And the woman who was famous for being on I Love New York, which, as you know, is a spinoff of that show of Who Wants to Date Flavor Flav, which is a spinoff
Yes.
of the show about celebrities in a house, which is a spinoff of The Real World. Everything gets traced back to The Real World eventually.
Oh my gosh.
But she was on this show, and it was just wildly entertaining. So the British versions of it are really good. And it's an international show.
And you like Canada too, right?
Oh, we're not even playing. Those people up north, they are playing this game.
That's how I feel about Survivor in Australia.
Oh, down under, playing the game.
By playing the game, it's a psychological game.
It is. It's so interesting. So you'll get like this season, there's a guy who's like a pro swimmer. And there's other people that have no athletic ability at all, but there's these competitions. So you get voted for head of household, then selects 2 people to nominate to be evicted. So these competitions are sometimes athletic, like how long can you hold on to this thing? Sometimes they're mental, and sometimes they're a little bit like random, like people won't necessarily, I felt like the last one, Rosie, the last competition I just saw was a little bit random. It was like the one where Felicia won.
Yeah. It's just a luck ball game.
Yeah. And so it gives more like opportunity for other people to win those competitions. I like it.
So I will say this, and I mentioned to you all casually before we started, like that I was on a reality TV show in my 20s, and it's on a now defunct like network. So I have a DVD of it that I could probably find and watch.
Oh, you gotta find it.
What is the name of the show?
It was called Studio 7. And the whole goal was you live with 7 people, and at the end of the week, you were in a quiz show competition. So this guy who created Who Wants to Be a Millionaire decided to merge the genres. He wanted it to be like a game show mixed with a reality show. And I went to take my brother, like somebody saw my brother in like a mall in Atlanta and was like, you should be on a reality show. And he had to get a ride with me home to Tallahassee. So I went with him, and they're like, we pick her.
No offense to Henry, but I would choose you too.
I know. Well, and so I went to New York, and I was terrible at it. But the thing that made me realize is like, it is amazing, because you think you're going to go and compete. It is amazing how you just start to like want to be friends with people more than you do. Like, it got hard to vote people off, and I've been there a week.
So, Rosie, you go ahead and let us have a link to that DVD, and we'll upload it to our YouTube.
Never gonna happen. I don't even know that my husband's ever seen that.
Wow, that's so
That video.
cool.
It's in there. It's in this closet right behind me.
Oh my gosh. You got to pull that out.
Hopefully the only copy in existence.
Yeah. Well, the reason I like Big Brother, I don't have the big energy, but I like to dissect like the motivations for human behavior. And I love seeing like the socialization and how people form sort of their alliances and their sort of fiefdoms and different, I don't know. It's so interesting to me to see how that like unfolds. And so I look forward to it every summer. Sarah, you got to jump on board here.
I'll check it out. Maybe I'll start with the celebrity version because I love celebrity shows. Or is that a miss?
It's an abbreviated. I would get started on this season so you can follow it live with me and Rosie.
All right.
We can add you to our text chain. Yeah. Yeah, our Big Brother text chain.
Oh, well, with that, welcome everyone to Platinum Perspective, the podcast about beauty, travel, luxury, and more. I'm your co-host, Sarah.
And I'm Megan. Sarah and I are best friends who put the work in to get the most out of life so you don't have to. So, as you might predict or expect, because we have our anxiety expert on today, we're going to be diving deep into the world of worry and anxiety. We all experience worry, but how can we differentiate between productive and unproductive worry? To guide us through this exploration, we have the privilege of speaking with Dr. Rosie Hunter, a renowned anxiety expert and founder of Test Wolf. So, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me. As you know, I could talk about this all day, every day. Truly in a field that I love. So let's do this.
Perfect. Okay, so we are going to jump into our rapid fire segment where I have questions for Rosie, and she must answer them in 1 to 5 words only, but you can clarify later.
Okay, great.
Okay. In its simplest terms, how do you define worry?
Anxious anticipation.
Good. Does everyone worry?
Yes. Full stop.
Full stop. Okay.
Yes.
And what is one thing that you worry about?
Not being able to elaborate on that last answer. I worry about missing Big Brother. I think about, what is there not to anticipate, right? So, there's some things that creep into the realm of the unproductive, but in terms of productive worry, gosh, kids, career, my yard, everything, my health, everything.
Okay. Well, that's a good starting off point. So, can we start by laying the foundation and help us, Dr. Rosie, understand the difference between productive and unproductive worry?
Sure. So I'll go all the way back to just clarifying what worry is. And I think it needs to be said that worry is thinking, right? So when I say like everybody worries, I mean, if you have conscious thoughts, then your brain has the ability to make those thoughts future oriented, right? So when we talk about cognitive behavioral, which Megan and I our specialty is cognitive behavioral therapy, the cognitive part of anxiety is worry, anticipating the future. So yeah, it's a natural response. It's our adaptive advantage as humans is to be able to say, hey, where is that saber-toothed tiger going to jump out from? Right? Where is that next avalanche going to come from? That's the whole reason we exist as a species. And those among us who did not anticipate the saber-toothed tigers and the woolly mammoths, they ain't our people. They're not here. We don't know those people. So yes, we all worry. It is helpful to our survival when we talk about unproductive worry, or sort of the folks that Megan and I would support. We're talking about when the strategic natural advantage gets out of control and starts working against us instead of just doing enough to be for us, right? Okay, now you know what? I like reality TV and I like John Mayer, and I feel like they go together. I feel like there's something basic about them. But John Mayer has a song where he says, worry is a friend that's misunderstood. I'm here for that.
Oh,
Hat tip to John Mayer.
Yeah. Yeah, you can have a good relationship with worry if it's productive, but when it starts creating a negative cycle of thinking in your life, I think that's when it starts to get out of hand.
Yeah.
Is there a way to identify, like, how do people recognize when they start to get into that cycle of negative worry, the kind that's unproductive? Like, how do people know?
Yeah, where's the line, right, between productive and unproductive? And it's here's a like one of the ways to most obviously understand if your worry is out of control is if you're worrying about your worrying, right? If you're worrying about whether or not your worry is causing you to lose too much sleep, or if it's causing that sort of stomach distress, or if maybe your worry is related to your migraines. Like if you're worrying about worrying, then you know it's gone too far and it's something that you want to start to manage. Or if it's interfering with your relationships, right? Like if in the moment someone you care about is talking to you and you cannot be in that moment, you cannot hear them because you're thinking about, what if I wreck my car 3 weeks from now, even though you have a spotless driving record, right? Or if you're worrying about the next COVID outbreak, in the moment right now, and you're saying, gosh, I wish I could have the current moment back. That's how you know your worry is gone. She's overdrive.
So interesting. So worry is often linked to the future. So if we all are anticipating the future, we want to take precautions. I'm thinking about, like, for example, we talked a lot about choosing products, beauty and home products, based on their ingredients to try to prevent negative health outcomes. So would positive worry prompt us to healthy action? And then other times, not positive worry would just like sit and fester how can we channel our worry into being productive?
Now, Sarah, I think you have a secret psych degree.
Oh,
You're like, why do you entertain us so well? It's yes. So that is the difference between like being a human being on the top of Maslow's hierarchy with all of the advantages and having your worry be unproductive. Does it lead to action immediately? Right. So if you have the thought, gosh, I don't want my leggings to cause cancer, or I don't want and then you make a choice based on that thought. And then once you've done what you can about it, you kind of really don't access that thought without like voluntarily accessing that thought, then that would be just unproductive worry that's helping you make strategic choices, right? But if it doesn't really lead to any immediate action in the short term, there's nothing you can really do about it, but it's just in there, just kind of going around, your just brain is just preoccupied by it, then it's unproductive. So yeah, Sarah, there's this weird relationship between the future and the present moment that worry is trying to figure out. I can challenge y'all more. Y'all want to be challenged more?
Yeah, of course.
Class? Okay. So worry is actually, it feels like it's about the future, but it's more about the current moment. It's more about feeling like you're doing something.
Okay.
And if you talk to the older folks, they'll say worry's like a rocking chair, right? And that's because it keeps you busy in the current moment, like you're preventing a bad outcome in the future, but you're really just doing it to assuage that stress in the current moment.
Oh, huh. The stress of the future.
Too much? Was that too much?
No, that's great.
Yes.
Yeah, repeat that again, though.
Say it again.
Yeah.
Worry is about providing yourself some reassurance that you're preventing a bad outcome in the moment. And it becomes disconnected from the reality of preventing the bad outcome. It becomes just feeling like you are.
Okay. So we talk about crutches a lot when it comes to like anxiety. Is that a crutch then?
Worry is so interesting because it's a cognitive component of anxiety, and it also is a behavior related to avoiding stress or to avoiding discomfort in the moment. Instead of tolerating uncertainty, it's like, let me just worry about the worst that could happen.
Yeah.
And it feels mean to do to yourself, and it does cause a lot of pain, but our brains are trying to like reduce uncertainty. Yeah. Y'all coming to church. This is my church. This is like a Sunday. This is my church. I meditate on these ideas. I don't meditate because that requires sitting still. But these ideas are big. They're big ideas. They're complicated, but I believe that everybody can be their own expert in anxiety, and that you don't need like, sorry, Megan, they don't need us to know this stuff.
Yeah, I know. We just got to provide the information and then walk away.
Get out of people's way.
Okay. So you and I have talked a little bit, Rosie, and I'm hoping you can like elaborate on this, but you have sort of a decision tree that you follow for worry, right? I called it your system. You didn't like that, but what's this decision tree? Can you like elaborate on that more? So somebody has a worry. Where do you go next?
Yeah. So the only reason I don't like to call it my system is because the cognitive behavioral field has tons of folks who approach this different ways. Yeah. And so one of my favorite, there's a book called The Worry Cure. I think the guy who wrote it is Dr. Burns. Dr. Burns? Okay.
Burns.
And so you can come up with a series of questions to submit your thoughts to. And the whole deal with managing worry is to just not let your thoughts just get in your head and say, I get to be here. I'm your best friend. Don't believe everything you think. So if you have a thought and you can submit it to a decision, a set of different questions, like yes or no questions. So is this plausible or reasonable, right? This sorts the, I'm going to get abducted from aliens from the, I could get robbed at the mall, right? Yeah, it's plausible, right? Crime's up. You could get robbed at the mall in any kind of major city these days, right? Can I take an action immediately is another question that you could ask, right? Is there something that I can do about this? So can I do anything about the presence of hurricanes? Yeah, I mean, I guess I could go and get, some battery operated radios, some battery operated, et cetera. Can I carry out actions that lead to a solution that are problem solving? And am I tolerating a certain amount of uncertainty? All of these are questions that are part of different decision trees. So if you Google worry decision tree, you'll come up with a bunch of different approaches to this. And my personal belief is that just submitting your thoughts to some kind of standard is the treatment. You don't have to get the perfect decision tree. You don't have to get my decision tree. You can just start to say, hey, is that a thought or is that something I have to do something about? Right. And just meta thought, thinking about your thinking.
I'm interested, like taking this back to what I learned on a previous episode from you about not wanting to be avoidant of things that are producing anxiety. So in the scenario of I'm worrying about getting robbed at the mall, well, the first thing would pop into my head, well, don't go to the mall if you're worried about that. But then is that avoiding it and creating more anxiety?
So there are some real easy ways to become agoraphobic, Sarah. Yes. If you think through it logically, you would attempt to avoid any place where you don't have total control, right? But the truth is, none of us have total control of anything.
What is agoraphobic? I'm not familiar with that.
Agoraphobia, sorry, jargon, is avoidance. It's a category of anxiety condition that is significant enough avoidance that you're pretty much restricted to your home.
Oh.
And it's associated with panic disorder, where you start having random panic attacks and then you just start to avoid everything because you never know where it's going to happen. And you end up pretty much housebound.
Oh.
So that's the truth of the human condition, right? Is that if we're clever enough, and now y'all, anxiety and worry are not for lazy people. You have to do a lot of thinking. And, if you're clever enough, you can decide, oh my God, the whole world is unsafe. I want to hide out in my house, right? But even that, like even our homes, are not completely safe. We're still tolerating uncertainty all the time. So getting, when we talk about like, I could get robbed at the mall, you then have to decide, what are your priorities? If you're a big shopping person, okay, I want to go to the mall. It brings me some happiness. It's, I want to do these things. And then you set restrictions. I'm not going to go certain times, certain days. Maybe there are actually whole malls that are out of the category, right? Like I'm not going to, go to this mall that has these really high rates of things. And I'm going to park under a light, right? Like we're all just making choices and we're deciding what our own risk tolerance is instead of trying to reduce all risk.
Interesting. Okay. Yeah, that makes sense.
I think my risk tolerance is growing over time. We started talking about what's fun about women in their 40s. Y'all aren't in your 40s. But I find there's something about having a kid where you're just like, oh yeah, I can tolerate a little more risk for myself. And sometimes you're like, not so much risk for the kiddo, but for myself, I can tolerate a little more risk. It's amazing how we're in this conversation with risk our whole lives. And it's just important to sort of have the conversation with, instead of just letting our thoughts just run us all around.
That's true. Yeah, that's interesting. So those are incredibly valuable tips. And I'm wondering if you can elaborate some more and share some more like practical strategies to like help manage anxiety.
So my most practical strategy, my husband says I'm not practical, but I am practical. My most practical strategy is to write it down.
Oh,
right?
Write the worry down?
Yeah, write the thought down. So I was in the military, and one of the things we learn all the time is not to fight on the enemy's territory. And your head in the middle of the night is anxiety's territory. She's like, ooh, wee, this is great. This is like, guerrilla warfare. She loves that. And so writing it down, even just having a piece of paper by your bed, if you're a nighttime worrier, or during the day, if you're like, I'm going to challenge my worry, like write it down on a piece of paper. Show yourself that it's a thought. Everything is less scary out of our head and onto paper. Everything seems like it's just about to happen in our head. But if you write it down, that first question, is it plausible or reasonable, is like, probably not. So write it down.
I can second that and speak to my own experience of I went through, Rosie knows this because you were like helping me through it the whole time. But during the pandemic, I went through like a bout of health anxiety, and it led to insomnia for me. And the insomnia was because I was up worrying. So I talked a lot to Rosie. I also got like a sleep therapist, and he said the same thing. Write it down, and even schedule your worry time is another thing that's huge. Like he was saying, just schedule 20 minutes where you're going to sit down before bed and with your notebook, and that is your worry time. It's those 20 minutes, write it all down, write about what you're going to do about it tomorrow, then put the notebook down, and the worry time is over after that. But allow yourself, in fact, schedule the worry time. And that was like so helpful. Even though I'm a psychologist, I needed, we all need help from time to time. And that was one of the times I needed somebody to direct me with that. And I can't recommend enough just scheduling the time that you're going to give yourself to worry. If this is like one of your proclivities or something that you're sort of, you deal with.
Yeah, Megan, that's just the nature of worry, that I don't know, you guys, why do I call her she? I think it's helpful to sort of like, is it called anthropomorphize? I think it's helpful to like
Yeah.
make anxiety into a character of our brains, because it has different strategies, right? It has like all kinds of different ways that it shows up. And one of them is that if you don't stop and look at it, it just leaks around your life.
Mm-hmm.
So that worry time is really important, because first of all, it says, I'm not just out avoiding fear itself, right? I'm stopping and looking at it. And then most importantly in that time is that if you worry to the end of it, like all the way through it, then worry doesn't become an avoidance strategy that is maladaptive. So what I mean by that is, and this is why it's like a lot of people say, oh, if you have anxiety and things, you can just chat with your friends. Yeah, if you have the normal amount of low-grade anxiety. But if you have good friends, what they'll say to you is, don't worry about that. I love you. Everything's going to be okay.
Mm-hmm.
Now, that's a well-meaning, loving friend. But what a good provider is going to say is, what's the worst that could happen? Right? Like, and how likely is that? And has it happened to you before? Because most people are really tough and have been through things. And if you push them with that, they'll say, yeah, I have been through something tough before, and I'm trying to prevent it again, but I got through it last time. So yeah. So what's the worst that could happen? Worrying like to that, all the way through to that, is going to be much more effective than worrying and saying, oh, don't think that, it's going to be okay. Like, push yourself.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's good. One disorder we talk about when it comes to worry, especially pervasive worry, is generalized anxiety disorder. So I just wanted to bring that up and talk about that for a second. So it's believed to be the most common anxiety disorder among adults. People who have generalized anxiety disorder find themselves constantly worrying about many things. They fear the worst in every situation, even if that fear is unfounded. It's a condition that's defined by excessive worry pretty much every day, with everyday issues and situations. It lasts more than 6 months. And in addition to feeling worried, you also may feel restlessness, fatigue, trouble concentrating, irritability, increased muscle tension, and trouble sleeping. It's estimated that about 5.7% of US adults experience generalized anxiety disorder at some time in their lives. So it is pretty prevalent in the scheme of things. So I think it's so helpful if you have something like this, or you're like wondering to yourself, do I have this? The best thing to go do is get an assessment done and see if it rises to a diagnosis. And honestly, I can't tell you like how many patients I've had that when you finally have a diagnosis, there's words labeling the thing that you have, how relieving that is to just be able to say, this is what it is. Because a lot of times this is like rambling around in people's minds and there's no definition for it. We're not sure what it is. And then there is a diagnosis for it. The great thing about a diagnosis for it is that there are tried and true therapies that have been researched that can address that disorder. So Rosie, I'm wondering if you can talk more about those therapies and the things you've seen work for people who have this disorder.
First of all, 5.7% for generalized anxiety disorder sounds like a pre-COVID number, right? It sounds like actually a number that...
Do you think it's jumped up?
Oh yeah. Anxiety disorders are what, like 40% of people will meet criteria for them at some point. What? Some of those, yeah, it's because it's, whoa. Sarah, think about it. It's built into everybody. So then the idea that it would get out of control is, it's pretty likely, especially, and it's very much context related. So I could go on this whole thing about anxiety and social media, but I'm going to save that.
Ooh, we should do an episode on that.
Yeah. Right? This is the primer for that. But yeah, so treatments for generalized anxiety, chronic worry about a variety of different things is what GAD is. So starting a conversation with your thoughts and learning a systematic way to challenge those thoughts with strategies like that productive versus unproductive standard, like worry time. Mm-hmm. And the way you know if the treatment that you're getting for your worry is going to be helpful is, do you have homework? Right? Do you have written homework?
Yeah.
You should be at home figuring out how to talk back to your thoughts in a way that applies to a lot of different situations. Right? If as a therapist, I would love to just talk everybody out of, unproductive worry and into productive worry all the time, and they would need me to do that. It's a teach a person to fish kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
So there are a lot of like different versions of CBT for worry that are super helpful. And there are a lot of folks who will help you try to avoid your worries. And that is a slippery slope. Don't be a hater, Megan. Don't talk about Freud.
Oh, yeah, I'll try not to do that. Yeah, I mean, can you talk more about like the avoidance component and like why we would not want to avoid?
Yeah. Anxiety isn't something where you need to figure out where it came from. You need to figure out why it's still here. And anxiety is reinforced by avoidance. So if you can find the system for avoidance and turn it down or off, that's what makes anxiety go down.
Mm.
And as moms, we need to hear this. Let me say just again for the moms, right? It's not about finding who the problem is that started the anxiety and trying to like undo that relationship. That's not what the research would suggest at all. It's all about saying, okay, what's keeping the anxiety going on a day-to-day basis now in the absence of a real threat or or immediate threat, and then saying, okay, that avoidance is what keeps it up. So let's turn off the avoidance, and the anxiety itself will go down. It's a natural phenomenon. We know this to be true.
And that's why exposure is so useful, right? So behavioral exposure is confronting yourself with the thing that you are most afraid of. And sometimes like for generalized anxiety disorder, that is your own thoughts, right? So you have to sort of confront yourself with your own thoughts and do what you said is follow them all the way to the end. Like for me, for health anxiety, following all the way to the end is I might die, or my kids might die, or my husband might die. That's the end of it, right? And then that's what you confront. And that's a hard thing to confront. But if you don't confront it, then the avoidance continues and the anxiety continues.
Yeah. Megan, that sounds so cruel, doesn't it?
It does.
Sounds like the only therapy that works is some kind of torture.
Wow.
And I'm so mad at our field for that, because therapists don't want to hurt people. That's not the reason that anybody's in the business. People want to see people feel happier and all that kind of stuff. So we're not, unless you go to a sort of a rigorous training program on anxiety, you're trained to want to see your patient feeling better and calmer and all that kind of stuff. But people, when they confront their anxiety in 30 minutes, 40 minutes, it goes down, they feel awesome. And that's what makes me feel great as a cognitive behavioral therapist, is giving people victories over their anxiety. It's not torture. We know how to do it in a way that makes you feel like, wow, that was a thought that I confronted, and she is not coming here today to terrorize me, right? Yeah. It's not to get you sort of terrified about life.
Yeah.
Wow. Interesting.
I have a theory too. I think the reason that anxiety is a she is because we're girls. And I think for boys, it might be a guy. Do you think?
You know why it's a she for me? It's because I think anxiety is a woman's evolutionary advantage.
Ooh.
Oh.
Talk more about that.
Clever, I say she this. Like all the flowers in my garden are she. I also have a lot of drag, and everything's she and drag. But yeah, so guys are big. I'm married to a caveman myself, and he's always like,
married to a caveman.
I am. It's just true. If you're married to a lumberjack, you just need to acknowledge it. Shouts out to my lumberjack. He's like 6'4", 6'5", and he tells me all the time, like, when the saber-toothed tiger comes, like, my size is all that matters. And the truth is, I've already prepared for the saber-toothed tiger. I've been down around the block, around the corner with my thoughts. By the time he wakes up to fight the saber-toothed tiger, like, my go bag is packed, honey. So his advantage has always been this strength, this size. And I think one of the reasons you see twice as many diagnoses of anxiety in women is because our cognitive advantage that starts at puberty, like this, goes to higher cognitive scores. Like there's something there. And so I think that, and that's not to say that there aren't large women and men who overthink, obviously. But I do think that it is a strategic advantage that affects women for some biological reasons.
That makes sense. That makes a lot of sense. I feel fortunate that I don't think I experience anxiety very often, but I do have this one big worry. So I thought, like, let's do something a little fun. Let me tell you guys my worry. tell you what I'm doing, and then you guys can diagnose me. Tell me what I should be doing. Like my day to day, I don't have a lot of worry, but probably a couple years ago when I had my first daughter, I started having this very unproductive worry of mass shootings. And the way that it's affecting my day to day is, I suppose it's not day to day, but it's situational. If I'll be out and about and I'll see someone who looks frightening.
Like a trench coat in the summer.
Exactly. So actually, that's a perfect example. I was at an outdoor mall in my area a couple years ago. My daughter was a toddler, and there was a young man who fit kind of the description that we're seeing of mass shooters, and he was wearing a trench coat. And I convinced myself that for sure he had a gun underneath there. And I was with my sister, and she was not worried about it. And I beelined for the restroom. I left her and I went into the bathroom with my daughter, and I just stood there for a little while. And then when I felt calmer and I reemerged, that gentleman had somebody with him, and obviously he had some type of disorder, and there was an adult with him kind of helping him navigate a shop, and the worry dissipated because it was like, okay, this is maybe someone who has something else going on. But that worry of a mass shooting creeps in periodically. And I think potentially because this is something I never thought of as a child, it wasn't prevalent in our culture. I'm very involved in gun reform, and that maybe is creating more worry because I'm getting the newsletters and getting the policy updates and things like that. So Dr. Megan, Dr. Rosie, what should I do here?
Well, let me start with the bottom line up front. I wouldn't touch that if I were your therapist, unless you were hiding in bathrooms every time you went out.
No, only one time.
So this is one of the misconceptions about mental health, is that if you have anything, it's some kind of diagnosis, right? And if this thing is in your life and you're being productive about it by sort of taking action, like, I think this is a problem, so I'm going to try to affect it in some way. It's distressing, but I'm not sure how impairing it is overall in your life. If your kids get to go out and be seen in the world without their Kevlar vest, right? Like, I'm going to say, and maybe that's because I overrelate to that, right? Like, before I joined the Army and had to go, I used to cry every time I had to shoot. Like, that's the extent to which I hated guns and didn't want to be a part of it. And
Yeah, Rosie, when I knew you, I don't think you'd ever touched a gun.
no,
Right?
no.
I remember you saying that.
Yeah. And I donate to, Moms Demand Action.
Mm-hmm.
I am pumped about these Tennessee moms who are going after their state legislature.
Yes.
They're amazing folks. And Everytown, like all of these things. And I even used to have nightmares about like mass shootings and just sort of guns, but then I joined the Army and had to touch some. That helped. But I don't believe that you have to do something about everything that sort of sticks in your head, right? But paying attention to make sure that you're not avoiding things without any kind of, like, an overdressed person in the weather with some sort of mental health issue that you can target is a perfect reason to go to a bathroom, right?
Okay.
To emerge from that bathroom and realize the threat isn't there and keep going to that same place with your kid. And then also give your money to these organizations. Like, I don't know that I would touch anything about that.
Oh, okay. I feel validated in that because obviously, like, exposure therapy wouldn't work. I would never buy a gun.
Oh, no. And actually, so many mass shootings have come from people trying to treat mental health issues with guns. American Sniper is dead for that reason. like it was really trying to help people who have issues. Like, Adam Lanza had a real bad case of a developmental condition, and his family was trying to help by teaching him to shoot.
Oh, wow.
He's the Sandy Hook guy. Yeah.
I did not know that.
So if you get too used to guns, you think they're a solution for everything. If you get too afraid of guns, then you can become housebound in the modern society that we're in. So being in conversation with yourself about how to strike the balance is the most important kind of thing. So Sarah, you might start talking to a provider, and it might turn out there's a lot more impairment, right, than you kind of realize, but I doubt it. And And
Megan, let me know when I start talking to you. Might provide it.
yeah, when you
I'll let
open
you
your
know.
Kevlar vest, I'm going to be like,
I'll keep an eye on that.
but yeah, you don't want to live a fearless life. That's the key,
Yeah.
right? The goal isn't to create people without fear, right?
Right.
The goal is to have people say, okay, these are the kinds of things I'm worried about. This is what I'm willing to do about it. Is there still joy? Is there room for joy
Mm-hmm.
in my life? Because life is scary, dude. It's scary.
Yeah. I think I have seen people before too, and given the up and down, just in a similar way, Sarah, where I see somebody, I'm like, I'm not sure what's up with this person. I'm just going to keep my eye on that, and as long as you can continue on in your life normally, like I think it's fine.
Yeah, we had one together.
Yeah, we did. I was thinking of that guy.
Yeah.
We were at a school function and somebody walked in the back and I thought he was overdressed and I didn't know him and he's standing in the back and we were at an assembly and I looked at Sarah and I was like, well, do you know him? And no, I don't know him. And I just kept my eye and he had his hands in the pockets too. And so it was like something, just the way he was standing, I just had a weird vibe from it. But then it turned out we think he knew somebody and then he left.
Yeah.
So it's fine. But like,
so like note to like men attending anything on your own, standing in the background, don't just keep your hands in your pockets.
Yeah.
It's creepy.
Just don't lurk.
Don't
Like,
lurk.
just sit down, be part of the community. I don't know. There was just something weird about it. But I always do. I think from working in prisons, I always know where the exit is too quickly. Like that's always in the back of my mind. Like, where can I get out? How can I escape from any room? So it doesn't cause me any distress. I just always know. It's like something I attend to. So I wonder if you just attend to that a little bit more too. I don't know.
Yeah. If we're doing true confessions,
yeah.
We all are doing some kind of strategy. And so, there was this shooting at the Allen Outlet Mall, which is about 5 miles from my house.
Right by you.
And so my sister is an anxious person. I think it's fair to say that. And so she was flirting with this idea of, we live in Texas. So she's like, maybe I'll just go to my house and stay there. It's not unreasonable. Like people get, shot road rage events around here all the time. So, but she came to town and we were sitting outside eating with my baby and my husband, like a couple of days after that. And this guy walked by, and because I have a little bit of Megan's history, I could see from his neck that he was a white supremacist, right? I could just tell from his tattoos and everything. And he was strolling down the street. He was looking a little thin, a little twitchy. I had a whole story about him in my head. And my response is to make eye contact and smile. And my sister goes, why would you do that? Like, and I do that on airplanes too. If somebody looks, I'm like, hi. Like, I want to be sitting by that person. I want to be a little bit closer to them sometimes.
Wait, so you're really not avoiding it.
Rosie's all approach.
I'm all approach, right? And in that situation, my sister's like, I'm sorry, are you smiling at the white supremacist walking down the street? For those of you who are just listeners, I am a Black woman. And I just sort of looked at him and my thought was just to look directly at him. And my sister, when we ended dinner, she was like, I'm going to go and stay in my house for a month. I'll be back.
Oh,
but he was just going down the street, this guy.
scary.
And I feel, I'm like, do you know you're scary? Like, do you know that, like, I'm not out to get you. You're not out to get me. Like,
if people tattoo that on themselves, they know they're scary. They're doing it
he was
too
trying to
scared.
survive in prison. That was my whole story about him. Yeah, he was trying to be scary. So maybe that's what I'm doing. Like, you don't scare me. I don't know. But we all have weird strategies in the moment. And, the goal is to have room for joy, as they say in that Disney song, right? Pressure like a drip, drip, drip.
Yeah.
Make a little room for joy in your life. Try to get that balance right and just have some tactics.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I have to admit, and I don't know that anybody else could use this strategy without knowing Rosie really well, but one of my strategies is pull out my inner Rosie. Like when I'm in a bad situation, like what would Rosie do? Be Rosie right now. And that just gives me a little bit of confidence because I think you do have a fearless way of living. It's not fearless, but in my mind, you have a lot more courage. And so I'm always like, Eric's like, what would Rosie do? Like, yeah, you're right.
That's true. I don't think courage is doled out evenly. So like, Megan, if I'm a mile into a run and my hip hurts, I'm done. But I know that like I should pull out my inner Megan and just keep running, right? Like just keep going.
Oh.
But yeah, it's not all the
Oh.
same for everybody.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. Well, we talk a lot in psychology about, especially with cognitive behavioral strategies, like one really useful thing, like not only just like giving a syndrome a diagnosis or a name, but also labeling our thoughts. And we call that cognitive distortions. Or what cognitive distortions do you see, or I guess patterns of thinking as a way to define that go along with worry? Like, what are the most common ones, or are there most common ones that you have identified?
Yeah, so cognitive distortions, and you all can Google thinking errors or cognitive distortions. And this should be good news, right? That our thoughts lead to our feelings and behaviors,
Mhm.
right? Things happen. The stories we tell ourselves lead to our feelings and behaviors, but not all stories are benign. In order for something to create anxiety and make us feel uncomfortable and avoid and do all those things, those thoughts have to have a little dust on them, a little magic logical tilt to them that make them more distorted than others. And so those thoughts have to be distorted in ways that they defy the laws of like nature,
Mm-hmm.
right? So I can't literally look at you, Megan, and guess what you had for breakfast.
Right.
But if we're worried about social anxiety, for example, we can look at somebody, see through their skull and tell they hate us,
Mm-hmm.
right? So mind reading is a cognitive distortion that is pretty common in social anxiety, especially. For a lot of anxiety, it's fortune telling. Like we
Yes.
all believe that we can predict the negative things going to happen, right? This is going to be a school shooting, and then the catastrophe, right? Or this is going to be a mass shooting, and then the catastrophe is the very worst that can happen when that happens.
Mm-hmm.
So fortune telling and catastrophizing, anxious anticipation, that's a sort of cognitive distortion pair that's there. And if we look at our thoughts and we say, okay, this is catastrophizing, then we
Mm-hmm.
can sort of say, okay, let me make that thought more helpful, not let me dismiss it. It's got to be, how can I make it more helpful? Mass shootings are unlikely, but I can find the nearest exit, right? Mass shootings are unlikely. But so for me, I will never carry a gun. I feel uncomfortable, but I carry a tourniquet with me all the time.
What's a tourniquet?
A tourniquet it ties off blood flow to a limb. This is crazy sounding, Sarah, but there's a thing called Stop the Bleed. Go to it, stopthebleed.com, stopthebleed.org. And it turns out a lot of people in mass shootings don't have to die, right? You can, if you take action to stop the bleeding, if it's not a sort of, this is really dark, y'all. Who sucked me into this?
Sorry.
If it's not like a chest wound, you can sort of stop. And that's what I'm willing to do about it, right? I'm willing to like hide, run, fight, and then stop the bleed, right? And so, yeah, that's, when we think about understanding thoughts as distorted, and then what are the other thoughts? The thoughts that are just more instructive, more helpful, less catastrophic.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to get eaten by a shark. I know you all go to these beaches a lot. I live in it's not landlocked, but I'm up from the Gulf. I'm going to get eaten by a shark versus I'll pay attention to when the beach is off limits, right? More sober thought, more basic thought, more boring thought, but more helpful thought.
Mm-hmm.
So we recognize things as cognitive distortions, not to punish ourselves for having the thought, but to adjust it.
Right. Yeah. And you can identify it when it comes back next time. You can say, oh, that's a catastrophizing thought, or that's a fortune teller right there.
Emotional reasoning is another one.
Mm.
I feel like today is the day I'm going to get shot, so it must be. Sarah's like, not funny.
I feel like you can ask the question, is it true or not true? But if you ask that question to somebody who's anxious, it's not helpful, because they're going to say it's true, even though you as somebody from the outside can say that's not true, or that's unlikely to be true. And they might say it's likely to be true. So I feel like asking yourself, is it helpful or hurtful for your outcome, is a more effective strategy for thoughts like that.
Whole ball game.
Yeah.
Like, is this thought helpful or hurtful in terms of the feelings and behaviors I want for myself right now?
Right. Yeah, for your outcome. That has to be person-centered. The outcome has to be about you, can't be about somebody else. But how do you want to be? And is your thought helpful or hurtful to that outcome? So
Yeah.
yeah. Okay, good. Well, Rosie, this has been so informative. Thank you so much for coming to talk to us about worry. Can you help me come up with 3 takeaways for this episode? I think the first one I saw was like everyone worries.
Everyone worries, and it's your friend most of the time. The ability to anticipate future outcomes.
Yeah.
My second one would be thoughts are just thoughts.
Mm-hmm. I like that. Thoughts are just thoughts. Mm-hmm.
I think the third one, and this is because of what Sarah brought up, which is just such a good sort of, because you brought up something that's really scary, not unlikely. I mean, it's not super likely, but it's not unlikely. And again, just terrifying. So I think that the idea that we're all tolerating uncertainty all the time would be our third important takeaway. And that the treatment for anxiety is tolerance of uncertainty. It's not just deciding that everything's perfect.
Oh, that's good. Yeah, I like that.
Mm-hmm.
Well, this has been great, Dr. Rosie. You're incredible. Thank you for sharing your wealth of knowledge with us. And I want to take you up on coming back for that social media episode because that's really interesting. I think that's a topic I'd like to dive more into. But that's it for this episode of Platinum Perspective. Thank you, everyone, for listening. Tune in every week for more beauty, psychology, and travel. Please tell your friends and rate, like, and subscribe. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.